Welcome to Resumes Applications Tailored to Your Employment Goals. This is Olga Escamilla.
Thank you, Olga. This is Belta Worley, and this is just a couple of pictures of each one of the presenters. So we are from Workforce Solutions, the Gulf Coast region comprised of 13 counties. And here is a picture of the entire state of Texas. There are 28 workforce boards, and the link at the bottom right shown here will take you to this, and you can click on the link on the left for your local workforce area to access local information for your workforce board region. So let me ask all of you that are on the webinar today, what workforce board are you with? You can either type in your number or you can type in your name if you know what it is. And I'll give you a few moments to type that in. Okay, I see someone from Alamo, and then Tarrant County. Okay, good. So let's discuss the objectives. Oh, we have a couple of other people responded. We have Eagle Pass and Middle Rio. Welcome. So our objectives today, we're going to look at resumes and applications and the importance of having keywords in them. We, as a group, will look at a job posting and then review resumes to see how each one fits the job qualifications. And we will talk about both paper and online applications and some of the differences between them. So I'd like to ask if in the workforce boards that you mentioned, we have Alamo, we have Eagle Pass, Middle Rio, and Tarrant County. Do you know in your counties if your employers prefer to use paper applications over online applications, or do you know that? So I'll give you a few seconds to let me know what you think your region mainly uses. So we have both, mainly online. Okay. A majority have gone to online. Yeah, we're seeing that too. It just, depends. Sometimes you go to hiring events and employers may have their paper applications there. Okay, very good. So this cartoon refers to the people skills this interviewee has. Now I'm going to turn it over to Felisa, who will introduce you to resumes and applications. As we go along, we will also look at the importance of describing skills as well as keywords as we create these documents. So, Felisa.
Thank you, Belta, and welcome. If I were to ask you, what is a resume, chances are we would all have a different answer. A resume is a marketing tool used by a job applicant to demonstrate their ability to perform a specific job. A resume should demonstrate that the individual is unemployable, that they meet the requirements of the job, they have the right qualifications for the job, and then they have the right skills for the job. It is the most important tool when applying for a job. It provides a summary of a person's experience, abilities, skills, as well as accomplishments. Whether it is a paper version or an electronic version, the resume is a tool for your students to sell themselves to a prospective employer. Many people think that the purpose of a resume is to get a job. Actually, this is not entirely correct. The purpose of the resume is to get an interview to improve the chances of getting the job. And tell me how much time you think an employer uses to look at a resume. 5 minutes. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Michelle. Actually, a scientific study conducted by the latter used a technique called eye tracking on 30 professional recruiters and examined their eye movements during a 10-week period to recognize and analyze where and how long recruiters spent on reviewing an individual resume. The study found that recruiters spent only 6 seconds reviewing a resume and making their final fit or no fit decision. The study also showed that recruiters spent almost 80% of their time reviewing the following sections on a resume: name, current company and title, previous company and title, previous position start and end date, current position start and end date, and education. So as you can see, the resume has to be very concise and it needs to be very specific to the job because it's only 6 seconds. Now let's look at how would your student compile a resume? The first thing that needs to be on the resume, of course, is the contact information. And that should include name, address, and a contact number. However, the home address is not necessary to go on your resume. The only time you might want to use your home address is in the event that it has something to do very specific to the job that you're applying for. Summary or objective. Your opening statement should start with one sentence about who you are, what you bring to the job, then describe the skills and attributes you have that suit you to the job. It should be about 6 lines long and always written in the first person without the personal reference. For example, the resume should never say, I did this, but it should say, did this instead. Your skills and accomplishments. Your students have skills and accomplishments. A resume should reflect anywhere between a list of 8 to 10 of those skills to the job that they're applying for. If the job they're applying for is not advertised, either the ad or the position description can provide a list of skills and experiences that are essential for doing the job. For instance, your student's looking for a job, but it's not posted. They can use the job search engine to find other ads for similar jobs and see what kind of keywords those ads use. Once they have a list to work from, they can start adding those words and phrases to their resume. And a good place to add these keywords should be in your summary or objective, list of key skills, educational history, and employment history. This also could be a really good classroom activity to have students look up various jobs and job descriptions and identify keywords. Now, the bottom half of our resume should contain our experience and education. Your student's experience, if your student has never had a job before, they can use other things to demonstrate their experience, and this can include any work experience they've done through school, internships, work placements, volunteer work. For each job, they should provide a list of things that they've achieved while in that job and the significant contributions that they made to the organization. Make sure that any achievements that they list and contributions that they match the key skills and strengths that's listed earlier on their resume and their objectives and summary. Educational history. A resume only needs to show the highest level of education. You should, however, your students should also include a few bullet points, including any academic achievements, awards they've won, or any groups that they've partaken in. And last but not least, this is perhaps one of the most important points that I could ever tell you when it comes to a resume. It is so important to review, to review, to review. No one can ever underestimate how important it is to have a good resume. First impressions do count, and first impressions that an employer has, the very first one they'll have of your student is their resume. Make sure that your students understand how important it is to review their resume, check for typos, and also it would be a good practice for them to have someone else to review their resume as well. Similar but different. You have a beautiful picture of 3 delicious looking apples. All of them are apples. However, there is one apple in that group that's different. We are now going to do an activity that will demonstrate the similarities and the difference between a resume and an application. Use your chat box to answer the questions: what items should be put on a resume, on an application, or both? Now, on the following slide, this is where your items are going to go when you answer that question. You will see items that will go on an application, resume, or both, and they're going to go in its respective table. on the column. So use A for application, R for resume, and B for both, indicating which column you think the item should go. So remember, it's going to be A for application, R for resume, and B for both. And put your answer in the chat box. Ready? Okay. Social Security number. Where would Social Security number go? A for application, B for resume, or B for both? Thank you for that answer. Absolutely right. What about achievement? This is a tricky one. Would this go on A for application, R for resume, or B for both? Someone said resume. Someone said both. You're absolutely right. Achievements would go on both your application and your resume. Volunteer work. Remember I mentioned that volunteer work is something that can go on your resume? So I just gave you a clue. Where would volunteer work go? A for application, R for resume, or B for both? Very good. I did give you a clue on that one. You're absolutely right. Any volunteer work should go on both. What about gender? I know this one can be a little tricky, but tell me where do you think gender goes? On application, A for application, R for resume, or on both? No responses? Resume? Application? You're absolutely right. Gender goes on application. Thank you so much for participating. Previous current employment. This is a very important section. And where should this go on application, resume, or both? B, thank you very much. Previous and current employment, absolutely right, will go on both. Summary or objective, we just reviewed that. Summary or objective, that would go A for application, R for resume, or B for both? Resume, resume. Oh, you're really sharp today. Thank you so much. References. Now, there's been a lot of changes in regard to references the last couple of years. Where do you think references go? Application, resume, or both? And we have application. Actually, your resume, your references should go on your application. Criminal history. This is a very sensitive subject for everyone. What about criminal history? A for application. Thank you. Application. Application. You're exactly right. Criminal history should be stated, and it should go on your application. Thank you very much. Previous current education. A, both. Very good. You're absolutely right. Previous and current education goes on both the application and the resume. What about relevant certification? Say you have a student that has a certification in welding or a nurse's aide. That certification would be listed where? You're right, both. You should put any certifications that you have on both your application and it should go on your resume. Thank you so much. And ethnicity. Ethnicity should go resume, application, or both. Thank you. Application, you are absolutely right. Boy, y'all are really on the ball today. Employer contact information. So employer contact information. Application, thank you. Very good. Military information. Application. And someone said both. Actually, that military information could definitely would go on both. And salary. Would salary go on A for application, R for resume, or B for both? Someone said N. Never. Actually, if your application does ask the question, what is your desired salary, you should put a desired salary on there. So you should never leave it blank. and there should be a desired salary on your application. Now, as you can see, applications and resumes are similar, but there are some differences between what information would go on each. There is some overlap. In some cases, you might find that there are some places you would put information on one and not the other, but this is pretty much the standard. This is an excellent activity that you could do with your students in the classroom. You can use a whiteboard or even a PowerPoint as we did today, and have your students exercise their knowledge on what goes on an application, what goes on a resume, or both. Thank you very much. Now I will just turn it over to Velta.
Okay, thank you, Felisa. And I am going to touch on the previous salary information in just a moment. I see that someone did comment that you shouldn't disclose it. We'll talk about it in just a minute. So you all mentioned earlier that your areas of the state typically use online applications. Something to keep in mind is that online applications can be timed, and I do hear about individuals timing out before they have completed the application. So it's really important for a job seeker to complete a generic paper application ahead of time so that all information is at your fingertips, which can help in completing the online application in a timely manner. Generic applications may be found online. I was able to do a Google search and I found a number of blank applications. We also have blank applications at wrksolutions.com. So here is a sample of a fillable generic application that is at our website, WRK Solutions. And an individual can type their information in and then print it. So this is a great way for your students or our customers in our workforce offices to have all the information available quickly when completing online applications. For people that maybe aren't quite as computer literate or don't feel as comfortable, they could print it out and then handwrite the information in there. And yes, and I see that Train PD did also mention that you could have the information on a Word document. So let's say you had a resume that has all that information. Yes, you can do a copy and paste if the student is comfortable for that. So let's look at a couple of areas of the generic applications. So I just looked at a couple. I circled home because a lot of people today don't even have a home phone number. And so people's tendency would be to leave it blank. But we recommend that you not leave any blank spaces. Instead, you could put your cell phone number as your home phone number as well and then repeat it under cell, which I do that very often when I complete documents. Or you could put not applicable. Another area, okay, we talked about salary earlier, and there's a little, we don't want to put the salary. I don't like putting the salary on an application or discussing it in an interview too much, but online applications make it difficult to keep areas blank. So you have a couple of options here. You could, if it allows you to, you could type "will discuss," or if the job posting has the salary ranges in there, some of the job postings will have the salary range. You could put that in there if that's the salary you're comfortable with, or put open. Some online applications, of course we're talking about fillable applications right now, but some online applications don't allow you to type words in number spaces, so you just have to be careful with this. For an individual who doesn't know what the salary is for the position or they know what they want, we recommend that they do some research, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. And then the last area might be, who can we thank for referring you? I put NA just to give you the example. We try really hard not to leave any blank spaces in an application. Sometimes the desired salary may eliminate you from being considered. It depends. It depends on the job. That could be a big discussion that we have, and I didn't want to deviate to that because that's something that can come out when we're doing the interviewing section as well. But salaries typically are negotiable. If you put a salary in there that's too low, the employer might find that interesting. If you put it too high, it can eliminate you. Absolutely. That's why doing research, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, doing research on typical jobs can be extremely helpful for anybody that's applying for employment. So anyway, this filling out this generic application could possibly be used as an activity with your students. Have a blank employment application available for them to complete so that they get comfortable with the requirements for completing an application using the information that Felisa gave us earlier, such as completing all spaces and being factual and truthful, because a job application is a legal document and an employer views it as such. Now we're going to stay on this slide, Diego. Here's an example of an application that has been completed. And notice that all the areas are filled in. This is a good example of what you would want to see from your students. Can you see how having a completed generic job application would be helpful when going online to complete an application? All the information would be readily available, and this completed job application could also be used to begin a resume, and vice versa. So if your student already has a resume, they can use that information to complete a job application. So let me ask you, and I'd like for you to use the chat box, what do you think are some of the differences between filling a paper application and completing an online application? And I'll give you a few moments to respond to that. Do you have any ideas for the difference between an online and a paper application? I don't see any responses. So let's go ahead to the next slide, and these are just some of the ideas that I came up with. There is, of course, the obvious. You're using ink instead of paper. There is usually no time limit when a paper application is involved, but online applications can be timed, and applications that are written, handwritten, can be corrected, sure. So can online applications, but typically you have to start over. If an applicant doesn't complete it in a timely manner when they're doing online, it could be timed out. With a paper application, you can leave blank spaces, which of course we don't recommend, but an online application typically won't allow you to advance to the next page if you have not completed all the areas, which can be pretty frustrating. Some career sites also allow you to upload a resume onto their website, which can then auto-populate many areas of an online application, and that can be a huge time saver. And then all the applicant needs to do is fill out the blank spaces. So an individual who is not comfortable with computers may be hesitant about completing an online application. So we suggest that a student who needs assistance with this visit a Workforce Solutions office to get some further help on that. But basically, though, both online and paper applications require the same information to be completed honestly and accurately, and both are considered legal documents, even with an electronic signature. So moving on, resumes and applications can be scanned by both humans and computer programs. We haven't really discussed the idea of resumes and applications being scanned by non-humans. That is a program known as an applicant tracking system, or ATS, and I think someone mentioned, Miriam mentioned, online looks for specific words. So very good. I was headed in that direction because those applicant tracking systems do look for keywords or specific skills, and then it'll pull those resumes out. So sometimes the applicant tracking system will read the resumes or applications before a live person even looks through them. So I'm going to share some tips about applicant tracking systems that I was able to find thanks to jobscan.com. So human recruiters often look for ways to eliminate resumes, such as looking for spelling errors, grammatical errors, or not having the relevant skills. Applicant tracking systems actually operate by searching resumes or applications for those keywords. An employer can ask the system to search the company's entire database of resumes to look for candidates with certain qualifications, so that even though you submitted your resume a long time ago, an ATS might identify a candidate for a position once again based on certain qualifications. So an applicant could actually apply for one position and get called in to interview for a related position just based on the keywords that were in that application or resume. And the best way to get your resume noticed is to anticipate those keywords that employers and recruiters will be trying to find. Many of the keywords can be found in the job postings itself. There are databases available to assist someone with the keywords for a position, such as ONET Online. And in our last webinar on employability skills, we talked about this, so I'm just going to touch on it briefly. But using an online tool such as ONET Online, you can go in, put the name of an occupation, and it will give you all kinds of words, job duties, those types of things that a job seeker would want to put on their application or resume. It will also give them salary information, so this is another good place to research those salary ranges. So applicant tracking systems make the recruitment process more streamlined for recruiters, and a job seeker can boost the chances of getting a resume pulled by researching the job postings and important keywords within those job postings, as well as going to something like ONET Online to find those keywords that employers might be looking for as they apply for positions. Now I'm going to turn the webinar over to David, and he'll be talking to you a little bit more on keywords.
Okay, thank you, Velta. So far, we've seen a little bit of the big picture with regards to resumes and applications. Now I want to speak about the fine detail of putting everything together. Remember, our goal is to highlight skills that we have that employers are looking for so they can remember us. Unlike Mr. Resume there dancing on the desk, it doesn't mean putting on a show, but rather a resume that's relevant to the employer's needs, so they might just call us in for an interview. And in doing so, we'll incorporate certain keywords that might be relevant to that job at hand. Okay. In our last webinar, we identified skills that make an individual employable. The following are keywords that describe hard skills, which are ones that we can learn, ones that could be measured, like how much can you lift, or how fast can you type. Those are hard skills. They could be used as keywords describing our skills that we have. There are other skills as well. Let me get this going here. There are other skills as well. These keywords describe soft skills, and soft skills help us interact effectively with other people, like having social skills, or maybe skills that help us to work well in a team environment. So again, these are soft skills, and we might not think about including soft skills as keywords on our resume. However, up to 77% of employers, they regard soft skills just as important as hard skills. In the next activity, we'll show you how we can combine soft skills and hard skill keywords on our resume to hopefully get the attention of the employer. But first off, let's talk about the basics. Some of the basics that we're going to cover about rewriting some of the statements on our resume that describe our skills, our hard skills, our soft skills, using certain keywords that the employer is needing. Number one is to use bulleted statements. This makes your resume a little more reader-friendly. Employers are generally not there to read a book, but rather find information that pertains to their needs. We want to begin with action verbs. Starting your description with action words helps to keep them short and powerful. Speaking of short, that's what we want to do. We want to keep it short. Your statements should be clear and brief. Also, don't be afraid to use number signs, dollar signs, percentage signs, etc. For example, if you save the company time, how much time did you save? By what percentage did you save? How much did you increase sales? Was it 10%? Was it 20%? Don't shy away from quantifying your statements. Avoid personal pronouns. This is a formal business communication. Besides, the employer knows that you're talking about yourself, so there's really no need to include personal pronouns. Incorporate keywords. Keywords, like we've been discussing so far, are important ingredients so the employers can see that their needs might be matched by this job candidate. Additionally, employers are more and more, like Ms. Belta said earlier, relying on digital technology to scan resumes for particular keywords that relate to job openings. Like, for instance, in our last webinar, Employability Skills, we listed skills that we currently have that are important to our current job, and then we learned how to add or improve to our list by reading job postings or maybe going on online to some labor market information websites like ONET, ONET Online. We want to have our resume or application that's accomplishment driven rather than task oriented. Rather than simply saying what you did, describe how you accomplished it. Practice these in a minute now that we've got the basics out of the way. But first, in this example, I want to talk about the overall objective of not being selling ourselves, but also to do it in a succinct manner. Hence that title, 140 items or less. That is taking the rules that used to be on using Twitter. You had to have 140 characters or less, but you get the point. We want to do this as succinctly and clearly and briefly as we can. Okay? So one example we found is on an actual resume. This is duties included me emptying trash cans, dusting, vacuuming floors, cleaning bathrooms, yada, yada, yada. So it kind of goes on. Is that statement a selling point? In other words, as we've already discussed, is that accomplishment driven, or is it simply listing out the task that we performed in the job? Is this description brief? Well, we can see certainly it's not brief. Is it clearly expressed? Duties included me emptying trash cans. That may be true, but it's not grammatically true, or it's not grammatically correct. What else? What about that me in the first line? Duties included me emptying trash cans. Not only is it incorrect word used there, but it's a personal pronoun. We want to avoid personal pronouns. A better way to rewrite this would be that second bullet point. Disinfected and replenished up to 16 rooms daily for a high-end hotel room. We see the bullet below, the statement is more accomplishment driven. We begin with an action word that describes our accomplishment. Rather than simply stating the task we performed, we quantified it by including the number of rooms we worked on daily, and the message is clearly expressed without being too wordy. Notice those keywords, disinfected and replenished. These are words we generally use, we don't generally use to describe something that we do. So we bought those keywords out of a job posting and included that into our bulleted statement. Okay? We're using words that the employer is looking for and presenting them in a way that highlights our skills. So now let's do an activity. Let's practice. Over the next few slides, I'm going to include a bulleted statement that might be found on a resume. We'll give 3 examples of how that statement can be best rewritten or best expressed. And I want you to enter the letter that you feel was the best choice in your comment box. And we'll discuss the best answer. And by the way, this activity can be done in the classroom. Okay? So let's begin. The first one is answered phone calls. Go ahead and enter in the chat box what you feel is the best response or the best way to rewrite that bullet. And I'll just give you a couple seconds. You think it might be A, B, or C? A, thank you. Kelly, A. Okay, A. So most everybody's thinking A is the right answer, and you are right. Okay, that is correct. A begins with an action word. It quantified our task by 100 plus is accomplishment driven as opposed to task oriented. And notice the keyword multi-line phone system. So good job. Next up, help create 2 safety training manuals. Which do you think, A, B, or C would be the best answer for this one? Okay, C from Korea. C, everybody's going with C again. Good. Did I make these too easy? C is correct. Again, with an action word, we quantified it using the percentage of accident-free safety record. Now, that was probably taken from the job posting. Although we create 2 safety training manuals, although they may be 300 or 400 pages long, the employer doesn't know that. But if I put 2 on there, it's not going to seem much. So instead, I use 100% accident-free safety record. It's accomplishment driven. We avoid the personal pronouns like you see in A. Okay? Let's go to the next one. Provided excellent customer service. Which do you feel best rewrites this bulleted statement? A, B, or C? Okay. Anybody? A. Good. Kelly. Okay. A, B. So we got 1A, 1B, 1A. So we got a little bit of diversity there. B is actually the best rewritten statements. A is good, but it's a little wordy, and it includes a personal pronoun. We don't want to have that. The last 2 lines say, my company's mission statement in correlation to the customer's needs in particular settings. That's a little wordy, might be a little confusing. B seems to be best written, expressed well, delivered, award-winning customer service with the 98% satisfaction rating. So not only is it good customer service, but award-winning customer service. So that's a good way of saying that. Again, C is just clearly saying what we did. It's not very accomplishment driven. So those were just some practice ways, and these are some good points to remember when writing or rewriting your resume. But like anything else, remember, the more you do it, the more you practice, the better you get. And also remember that we can always add or improve our list of skills that we have or key words that we use in writing our resumes. And we can find that by referencing relevant job postings or going to ONET online website for activity. Yes, it's a great activity for students. You can do it in the classroom. You can use PowerPoint like we have here, maybe even a Jeopardy style game activity. So that was good. I'm going to hand the mic over to Mr. Diego, who's going to talk a little bit more about putting together your resume or application.
All right. Thank you very much, David. Earlier in the chat box, I saw a question from Train PD asking if housekeeping would work. And if that's what the employer is asking for in the job posting, that would definitely work. But maybe you'd want to elaborate a little bit more as far as how you house kept. But I just wanted to touch on that before I got started. But thank you very much, David. So we have looked at both do's and don'ts for resumes and applications and how to construct bulleted statements. Now we are going to look at resumes through the eyes of a recruiter. So, just like that guy on the screen, it makes sense to me that since I was born premature, I'm naturally good at completing projects ahead of schedule. Ha ha ha. But would the recruiter see that in the same light? Probably not. So, before we begin, let me ask a question, and I ask you to enter your answer into the chat box. Whose opinion matters the most about your or your students' resumes? So, whose opinion matters the most? The employer. Very good. So, yes, it is the employer's opinion that matters the most. When evaluating resumes, employers have different perspectives. And a way to speak to those perspectives is through the use of keywords. Keywords are a great way to speak their language. So let's go ahead and move on. All right, so here's an example that we used in our previous webinar about employability skills for a CNC machinist position. We scanned it to pull out the keywords such as reading and editing Mazitrol, setting up CNC mills, experience in 4-axis, programming Mazak, and reading blueprints. We're going to use this example for an activity that we're about to do. So, all right, so here on the left side of this slide, we have the job description of the CNC machinist. We have the resume on the right side, and what I'm going to do is give you about 20 to 30 seconds to read that job description. And what we are going to do is flash examples of resumes in front of you to give you the opportunity to choose on which resume you would give a further review. So it's going to happen really fast. So, all right, that gave you about enough time to read the job description. So, like I said, it's going to go fast. I'm going to flash them to you, and I'm going to change every 6 seconds. On your marks, get set, go. So remember, you are determining whether this person is going to have an additional review. On those resumes, which one do you think would take, or would you give a further review before you made a decision to bring them into an interview? Would it be A, B, C, or D? Put it in the chat box. C, C, C. Just one. Some of, right, the font can be too small and that may be distracting. B, good, good. All right, so our answer is B. So we are going to review each one and we're going to tell you why. All right, so the answer is B. Now let's go back and review. All right, so in your top right of your screen, you can zoom in to see, to get a better view of the resume. So, all right, so let's look at James Thibodeau. Based on the information that James Thibodeau provides, he is a good candidate, but his resume isn't as effective as an employer may prefer. He has an unprofessional email address, as you can see. He has studmuffin@aol.com. We wouldn't recommend that because it's not very professional. So if you see right there, studmuffin@aol.com. So yeah. All right. The overly short career objective isn't very effective. We recommend a summary of qualifications that includes any training, education, experience, accomplishments, etc., etc. The amount of information he has right here for 20 years working for Mac Enterprise may not suffice for 20 years of experience. And then also, he put his graduation date in 1980. That may not be very effective for him either. So those are some things that you can let your students know that they can leave out if they have a graduation date prior to the 1990s. So, all right, so let's go ahead and move on to resume B. This was our choice. This is our choice for further review because his resume directly speaks to the employer's requirements for the position. And he also includes relevant experience within the last 10 years. So if you see this right here for Mac Enterprises, it speaks to the employer's requirements. Even though this resume is our choice, that doesn't mean that we can't improve it And the way we would improve it is by adding information in the objective up here, or maybe converting it to a summary of qualifications. And what he could also do is provide additional details of what he accomplished as a general laborer here at ADC Labor. All right, so resume C. So, how many of you?
Make it bigger.
Oh, I don't have much. Okay. How many of you have heard the term overqualified? Well, John Taylor's resume shouts to this employer at first glance. He is an extremely good candidate, but his resume may come across as show-offy. So, what we have noticed here is that he has irrelevant academic experience. So we would suggest that he uses more practical experience that speaks to the employer's requirements. We generally advise candidates to place academic achievements in the summary up top to where the employer can see it front and center, and then leaving the details to an education section later on in the resume. All right, and our last resume, Jeremy Thompson. So he has skills that are not relevant to the job that he is currently applying for. So if you look over here in the areas of expertise, you can see bookkeeping, you can see retail banking, which are very good skills to have, but not if he's applying for a CNC machinist job. Another thing that we can point out with this resume is that the formatting could be a little distracting to the employer. So we would advise him to be more direct with what his objective is in obtaining this job. But in conclusion with this resume, I'd like to leave you with a couple of key takeaways. Be direct and only use relevant information on your resume. Speak to the job posting's requirements and match your skills to those requirements. Include highlights like your accomplishments and your achievements in the summary of qualifications. And one resume does not fit all job postings. And what I mean by that is some people send the same resume to every employer and job they are applying for, but we wouldn't advise that because a human scan can generally tell the difference between a cookie cutter resume and a tailored resume. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to keywords and how you use those effectively to speak to the employer. So now I'm going to turn it over to Belta, and she's going to conclude our discussion.
All right, so thank you, everybody. So let's do a brief review. We learned the importance of incorporating keywords into resumes and applications. We talked about resumes and applications having areas of crossover. Some can be similar or different from one another, but they cross over quite a bit. We gave a quick human scan, which is what Diego's activity was for the machinist position. And, you know, it really is pretty typical of a hiring manager or HR individual just to kind of take a quick glance at each resume before they determine that they want to look further. So that's kind of what we were doing with that activity. Resumes and applications can be scanned by applicant tracking system programs, which can rank them based on the keywords that they have embedded within those applications and resumes. And then we covered the basics about having bulleted statements on our resumes that are accomplishment driven rather than task oriented. So now we are at the conclusion of our webinar, and we'd like to open up this to you if you have any questions. And I see that one of the comments was, we should tailor the resume to meet employer needs. Absolutely. So a resume is a living, breathing document, and it should incorporate the keywords that the employer has placed in his job posting. And again, we can use online resources such as ONET Online to find out more about the skills, the keywords, the requirements of a position, including the salary. There's typically salary ranges found on those websites. And so absolutely, every resume should be tailored for every position that an individual applies for. And I know that's kind of hard sometimes for some people to recognize. So, yeah, so we would want our students and our job seekers to use the terminology that the employer is using on the job posting. So anything else? Any other questions anybody have?
Definitely, job search is a full-time job. Not can be, it is a full-time job. And I just wanted to make a little clarification about the salary on the application. Most applications will ask you what is your desired salary. An application should never, nor should an employer ever ask you what your previous salary on your previous job was, but they can ask you desired salary. It can go 50-50. I would suggest research. And even if you don't, on the application, they can put a desired range, generally what's minimum to maximum range on the application. But you do want to put it on the application. It shows the employer, one, that you know something about the job, that you know enough about to be able to tell them what the salary range of the job. So I would suggest putting a desired salary, just researching the position, what the salary range is for that position, and definitely putting it on the application. But you should never put previous salary on any application, resume, or even in an interview. That should never be asked or brought up at any point in time. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and we will be doing this again in January 17th. We will be talking about interviewing.
So please come back and join us.
Yeah, I learned some good stuff.
Thank you so much to our presenters from Workforce Solutions. We really appreciate all the wonderful ideas and activities that you've given us for the session for our students. We thank you for your expertise and for sharing that with us. Thank you, everyone.